Love of life. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Hey, welcome to the EDC offices here in Roswell. Mike Espiritu, President and CEO of the Economic Development Corporation. I will share with you that we are truly blessed to have this type of representation in our state capital. I think you can all agree to that. You know, they, as you probably know, and I do want to always say this to people in front of you, is they truly are servant leaders in working towards making our state a better place, and especially our region. And we thank you for all you do and the sacrifice you make, not only for all of us, but for your families as well. So thank you for that. I'm not going to talk a long time because it's their show. And I'm going to turn it over to Kristen Chappell. She's with EDC. She handles the Business Retention Expansion Program and many other things. She's going to be our moderator for today. We do have some things for you to think about, but really they want to hear from you and answer questions and you answer questions they may have. So without further ado, thank you again for making time to be here. This is a good positive piece on how we can help get them information and you the same. Thank you. Kristen.
Okay, did you say opening statements?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
2 minutes.
2 minutes for opening statements?
We can hardly say hello in 2 minutes.
Try your best, right?
Good morning. I'm Candy Spence-Ezell, State Representative, District 58, and I just finished up my 20th year in Santa Fe. Oh my goodness, time flies whenever you're having this much fun. I do want to thank the Roswell-Chaves County Economic Development people for coming up there and having the reception. It was well attended. People were enthusiastic about it, especially with the air show possibly coming into our state. And folks, we do stand up for what's right in spite of some of the stuff that does go on in the newspaper, which I'm very disappointed that these few people think that they're going to make a big stink with us. We do represent all of our constituents. So thank you all for being here, and we'll be glad to answer any questions later on.
Hi, I'm Jared Hembry, State Representative for District 59, and I just finished my first session. And it was kind of a whirlwind. I think, as many of you know, I was appointed about 5 days before the session started. So I felt like I was getting drugged behind a horse for about the first 3 weeks. And then about the time I got my feet under me, it was over. So it was, as I said, it was kind of a whirlwind, but I learned a lot. I had great people here at this table who helped me along and kind of showed me the ropes, and I learned a lot. I'm proud of what we did up there. There were some pretty bad things for the oil and gas industry. There were some bad things for people who enjoy their Second Amendment rights, and we were able to kill a lot of those things. So I think we did a really good job. So thank you.
Good morning, Greg Nybert, Senate District 27, and it was certainly as Jared's experience, I found out about a week and a half before the session started that I was moving from one chamber to the other and had to pack up my office so this guy could move in and do some other things housekeeping wise. But I would echo Candy's thoughts about how important it was for us to see a lot of you come up to Santa Fe to lift our spirits, to bring back some sanity to our minds, and to give us the ability to continue the fights that we were engaged in. You know, a few years ago when I was first in the House, it was always the Senate that was the backstop on some of the really bad legislation. But I have to hand it to my colleagues over in the House here. They were the backstop this year. Paid family medical leave was stopped because of the people that are to my right and left over in the House. And it got stopped about 2 days left in the session, and it was certainly a tremendous defeat. In fact, I have a couple articles here from the Santa Fe New Mexican. Here's how it started. Governor talking about all the things she wanted to accomplish. And at the end of the day, here's the last day, Thursday last week. That's Tara Lujan weeping because paid family medical leave got defeated. And so I think that those two pictures say a lot about the work that was done, and particularly the work that was done by the people to my left and right in the House. So my congratulations to them, and we're pleased to be home, I assure you.
Good morning, I'm Jim Townsend. I represent District 54. I have just a little bit of Chaves County and much of Eddy and Otero. Southeast New Mexico has much to be proud of. When you look around in the legislature and see, there's 33 counties, 5 of which have a positive impact on our general fund. 28 receive money from it. You guys, like Eddy and Lee and Sandoval and Bernalillo, put money into it. Los Alamos, I think, is one. But it is, it's always a honor to serve people that really care about the state. And they come to Santa Fe. Many of you do. We appreciate it when you come. But what you represent is what I call the meat and potatoes of New Mexico. You're really what makes New Mexico tick, and you should be very proud.
Hi, I'm Andrea Reeve. I represent District 64, which is Roosevelt, Curry, and part of Chaves County. This was my second session, first term, finishing up. Definitely goes a lot faster than the 60-day, but I felt we, did some really good things, considering we're in the minority and we were able to stop some bad bills, and yet we got some good stuff, through also. So I also want to thank you for the people that popped up and saw us. I mean, when some like us, we don't really get to go home for the entire 30 days because we're so far away. It really helps when people pop in and say hi, or even just leave their card to know that you're supporting us and you understand what we're doing. So we appreciate all the calls, emails, little gifts that are left in our office just to kind of keep pushing us along. And very happy to be here and looking forward to answering any questions you might have.
Very good. Thank you so much. Thank you, legislators, for being here this morning, as well as our community members. I think this shows a good cohesion of our community and our state, and we're all passionate about what's going on. So thank you all for being here. Okay, let's get started. I'm going to ask these questions, and whoever wants to answer, nothing is specific to anybody, but let's get this going, okay? In the most recent session, what legislation will have the greatest impact on local businesses in Chaves County?
Well, I'll take it. I don't think it's just one. I think that the tax package was something that will have an impact. But I'd be remiss if I didn't talk a little bit about the impact of HB 41. It won't have an immediate impact, but it will come in 25. And it's going to have a really huge impact on this group, because rural HB 41 is a clean fuels bill. When you read it, on the front of it should say, well, that's not a bad idea. The government is recommending or requiring a new cleaner fuel to be purchased or to be manufactured. Couldn't be farther from the truth. It is it's an embedded commodity,
Tax on carbon.
yeah, it's not really a tax on carbon, but it causes the creation of a clean fuel commodity that will be traded on the market. It'll raise our gasoline prices about from 38 to $1.80. I mean, where it has occurred in Oregon, California, and Washington, it's been about 50 cents. So I think unless we can get some legislators in the House and the Senate that can change that, or if we can rise up enough to make the governor understand that that bill is bad for New Mexico, it will degrade quality of life for many people in New Mexico, especially rural New Mexico, where they drive farther to go to work, to get groceries, etc. And so it's kind of tripped my trigger. It's been something I've been really focused on, and I think it's really bad for New Mexico.
I'd like to add to that too, because this green energy bill, how it will affect rural New Mexico. The governor's already said that by a certain year, I think it's 2026, that 40% of all cars that are being sold in New Mexico should be electric vehicles. Wait just a minute, folks. We don't have the infrastructure to get us from here to Santa Fe. Those cars are not cheap. And I think we all got here today by using fossil fuels. The oil and gas industry does pay the bills up in Santa Fe. Every car, regardless of whether it's electric or diesel or gasoline, does run on tires. Electric vehicles still have to have oil to operate, still has to have copper, so we still have to have an extraction industry in place. I don't think a green pickup, if you want to call it that, is going to be able to pull my big stock trailer to get my cattle into town to market. So what is that going to cost the consumer in the long run? This has a lot of good qualities, but still don't impose it on the whole state. If you want to have an electric vehicle, that's your prerogative. But to mandate that our car dealerships have to have this many vehicles on their lot, you know what that's going to cost? Every one of us that do have to have an internal combustion engine will be going to Texas to buy our vehicles. So think on that.
You know, the tax package had several things that I think will impact individuals and businesses within our community. We did lower the tax rates on a good chunk of middle income taxpayers. The other things, the farmers and ranchers that have dyed fuel, they will receive an ability to get back the gross receipts tax that they've paid on that fuel for their operations on the farm and on the ranch. There's some tax exemptions for oil and gas producers that are producing stripper wells. Those are those low production wells that are still at the end of their life. So there's some provisions in the tax package to encourage them to continue to produce those wells. There were tax deductions for some teachers who spend money out of their pocket to obtain supplies for their students, and there's a variety of other tax benefits that were in the tax package that I think people in Roswell and Chaves County will be able to take advantage of. So we were pleased to do that. It really didn't accomplish our goal of getting tax reform, but it did give individuals and businesses some ability to maybe lower their tax burden. We're happy to do that.
I think the other thing that's interesting about the bill that Greg's talking about, Senator Griggs, I think Senator Griggs carried it. It was a bill that really touched on those very small oil and gas operations, 3 BOE a day or less, barrel of oil equivalent. And what it really does that people should take notice of is most of those very small wells are not owned by large majors. They're owned by individuals, mom and pops across New Mexico. And it's going to allow them to put environmental equipment on their well that they quite frankly wouldn't probably do or are not required to do. But they now can address some environmental issues. And there's 14,000 of these marginal wells across New Mexico. So I think it's going to have a really good environmental impact in New Mexico. It's going to help those small operators. And when you think about 3 barrels of oil a day, the state on those 14,000 wells, the state's still deriving about $250, $300 million a year of royalties off those wells. So they're just investing a little bit, the state's investing a little bit that will extend the life of those wells out farther, and it'll pay great dividends for the state too. And environmentally, it's good news too. So I think it's a good deal.
I don't think Warren maybe can take advantage of the rural healthcare things that we did, but we did get in there the rural healthcare practitioner tax credit to try to encourage more medical professionals to come to rural parts of the state and to try to make it easier for them to recruit. So we hope that helps a little bit, and you might want to let us know how that is actually working so that we go back next year, we can have a report. But there were some efforts to try to encourage specifically medical professionals to come to New Mexico. And we do that, but on the other hand, we're doing everything we can as a legislative body to kill the medical practice in New Mexico. So it doesn't make sense to me what we're doing. We're handing out tax credits and things, but on the other hand, we're not doing anything about medical tort reform. We're not doing anything to lessen the burden placed on medical professionals, but yet we're willing to do these tax credits. So somehow we got to start addressing the root problem, and that is the amount of money it's costing for a person to come and set up shop in New Mexico as a medical professional. It's exorbitant. Dr. Osmani told me right before we went up that they just paid their medical malpractice premium, $87,000 to open his door on January 1st. $87,000 for one doctor in Roswell. And it's because of the tremendous liability that they incur being in that profession. And we have to do something about that ultimately if we want to have a steady, a professional medical staff in particularly rural New Mexico, but even Albuquerque, they're starting to feel the pinch up there.
Okay. On the topic of what you're talking about, Senator, are there any other comments that would like to be made on the current status of the medical malpractice legislation?
I don't think we saw it. I don't think we saw any medical malpractice legislation. It wasn't on the call, and the governor had control of the agenda. So
it was very disturbing to me that we did not see that it was not a major impetus of the governor to try to correct that problem. We talked about it for the last 2 sessions. It's a horrible bill. I mean, I carried, I think it was HB 88 last year to try to unwind everything that had been done by trial lawyers 2 years prior to that. But it was very discerning to me that something that was affecting the lives of New Mexicans in such a negative way. I mean, the majority of our small hospitals are running in the red. They cannot sustain the business plan that they had before them. And that is going to cause every one of us to rethink where we go to have little surgeries or big surgeries, because we all want our loved ones to be in a place where they get the absolute best care should something bad happen, should there be complications. And when we are constantly deteriorating the the level of technology and technical capabilities of our hospitals. It's something we got to think about. Do you want to have it in Artesia? Do you want to have it in Roswell? Or are you going to go to Lubbock? Well, that's the problem. Because when we go to Lubbock, we take away from the very people that are our neighbors and that we love and trust right here in town. So I think I think she missed the boat on several things, including that.
And a lot of our people can't go to Lubbock.
Yeah.
It's not within their means, so we have to have that.
So one thing that did pass was this sort of self-assessment by the hospitals that they would then send to Washington, D.C., and the federal government would match those dollars, I think 3-to-1 or 4-to-1, and then they would come back. And it helps out the rural hospitals a lot more than it does the urban hospitals. But again, it's a short-term fix for a business model or actually for bad policy of the state to help smaller rural hospitals. It helps a lot and it's a good deal, but it's a short-term fix. The policies of the state and what we have done with things like medical malpractice needs to be addressed for the long-term solution.
Another thing that's been a pretty sensitive matter is Senate Bill 3. Although that did not pass this session, which is the expansion of paid family medical leave, in case anybody doesn't know what that is. If you could share your thoughts on the ongoing impact of the existing 2021 Healthy Workplaces Act. This is something that I personally can attest to because, as Mike mentioned, I go out and visit with local businesses. Those in manufacturing are being significantly impacted by this, and it was rather nerve-wracking to see if the longer ability to be out of work was going to be passed. So if y'all wouldn't mind sharing some of your thoughts on this.
I'd like to start with that, please. I appreciate every email and every phone call and every stop by my office and leave a message that you guys sent in regards to the paid medical leave. This bill was carried by people that have never signed the front of a paycheck, okay? They have no idea what it is for, let's say, Warren, to have to set up a budget and meet those goals right there without going over. We all do it in our businesses and in our life. But folks, this was over the top and it was ugly, ugly. I have not seen that picture right there. And a lot of these people work for government. So what's the problem with it is in their minds, what's the problem with this bill? It will put small businesses out of business. Just me.
Well, it was poorly drafted. It was a bill that was unsustainable for businesses. I think I read it took 31 employees to pay for one that took. I'm sorry, Diane. I normally have a mic. It was poorly drafted. It had, if I remember this correctly, it took 31 employees working and paying in for one person to take the 12-week time off. You know as well as I do that the chances of that being abused was terrible. And so it was a horrible bill for business. Most employees gravitate toward employers that do a good job taking care of them. We're very lucky in Southeast New Mexico that we have so many great employers. And I mean that. I talked to some of them in other parts of the state. And there's such animosity toward employers that, I mean, we just don't have that down here. I mean, we always have, you know, some outlier where you have a problem, but for the most, we have really good employers that provide careers, not just jobs and paychecks, but careers for people for many years. And what they haven't caught on to in some areas is that you can catch a lot more flies with honey than you can vinegar. And when they treat employers with that type of attitude, you're not going to get much. And that's why New Mexico does not have very many corporate headquarters in New Mexico, is because of bills like SB3. If I was looking for a place to set down corporate headquarters, I would have to really think about that type of risk associated with me putting brick and mortar in downtown Roswell or Albuquerque or someplace when I have that kind of risk looking at me. It's a lot easier to be in Dallas or someplace where they love having me.
You know, the fact that it's SB3 says quite a bit. It was a top priority bill. It was developed well before the session started. Its primary sponsor was the President Pro Tem of the Senate, Mimi Stewart, and she's the one that shepherded through the process. And so they had a lot of political weight, if you will, behind the passage of that bill. And over on the Senate side, it made it through the Senate in fairly short order. And during the debate, despite the fact that we had a number of employers talk about how they cared for their employees and how they, you know, paid for cancer treatments or other treatments, and that they thought that they were doing what was not only right for their business, but right for their employee. And they did not want to see a bureaucracy created that would interfere with that relationship. And those stories I thought were very, very poignant. But the fact that the ones carrying the legislation, they really wanted the bureaucracy, and as Jim pointed out, there's just a different attitude toward that employer-employee relationship in other parts of the state, and creating a bureaucracy to tell the employee and the employer how that leave is going to be administered, and then to receive a so-called government check. It's really a check from the money that the employee and the employer put into the pot, but getting a government check for that period of time. And then the employer is having to figure out, how do I fill that position when this person's off every Monday or off every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or whatever they come up with. It created some real problems for business. And the sad thing is that type of legislation, the anti-oil and gas legislation, it sends a message out to the business community, whether it passes or not. And I feel for you guys, because it's going to be another hurdle that you all have to address when you're trying to recruit businesses to our community, is the political risk of doing business in New Mexico. We're sorry for that.
And I'd say on Greg's comment that there was a lot of political clout behind that bill is kind of an understatement. When we were debating it on the House floor, the governor herself was lurking around the halls outside the chamber, trying to twist arms of some moderate Democrats, and we had 11 of them who voted with us to kill the bill. And Representative Sapansky, who is the majority whip, was going to their desks, pulling them out into the halls, trying to, whip them into line, and they held strong. And without those 11 moderate Democrats, we could not have killed that bill. And the governor was down there herself. 2 or 3, 4 members of her staff were down there pulling people out into the halls. Some of these moderate Democrats really threatening them with primary races and other things to get this through, and they held strong. And I think that says a lot about some of the friends we have up there that are from rural areas, that may be Democrats, but they understand what these things, what these things do to small businesses and the message it sends to businesses in general. So we couldn't have done it without their help. So
Yeah, I mean, it really was guerrilla warfare. I mean, it was that. I love it when it gets like that. I like that. But when you know that you have that kind of diverse support and opposition to a bill, everybody's on the floor. You don't have to put a call on the House to keep them in there. I mean, everybody's in there. As Jared said, the governor and her staff were out in the hall and they were jerking them out one at a time. They already knew who the 11 were that we were working with to kill the bill. And it was a cool, it was very cool to see the bipartisan work to do what was right for New Mexico. I mean, we don't see that as often on really touchy bills like that. But when you see people really start standing up for their constituents and doing what they know is right, it's cool. And it caused a few. In fact, my wife got in trouble. She was, and some of the other ladies were in my office across the chambers, and when the vote came in, you could hear them hooping and hollering, and the speaker thought it was somebody in the chamber, so he gavelled down on everybody and told us to be quiet. And I had to tell him it wasn't us, it was her, so it was okay.
Any additional comments? Moving on. Do you think there will be a special session ordered to address public safety concerns, gun control, and how will that affect us here in Chaves County?
Oh, and since I'm kind of the crime person, I guess, as I think everybody know, the governor's big agenda was pushing crime legislation with her firearm bills and then some surprise bills kind of at the end. I think we did rather good, rather well in preventing a lot of these bills from happening. As you probably already know, the not bringing a firearm into a polling place actually passed, but we were able successfully with Representative Bill Ream to get a concealed carry exception placed in that. And so that sits on her desk, which I assume she will sign. So that happened, and then the waiting period, we were able to get down to 7 days, and I believe that has an exception for a concealed carry too. So go get your concealed carries, I guess. So those were the only 2 gun bills that we actually saw. I don't know how much those are going to increase public safety, because generally it's criminals who have guns, and you know the whole argument there. But I guess those made her feel good. But the other things that kind of was really strange to me is at the very end, I think it was like Tuesday, we ended on Thursday, 2 bills hit judiciary that were apparently governor's bills that were really pro-crime. One actually raised the penalties for second-degree murder. So yeah, first-degree murder, which is a mandatory life sentence. Second-degree murder is your really most common murder, and it dropped down to 15, and that's discretionary. And so it was a raised penalty just to 18. And when you compare it to the other states, it's actually very, very low, but it was an increased penalty. I consider it more of an increased punishment. When you murder somebody, it's really hard to tell your loved one that their life is worth 15 years. But that was one of her bills. Of course, I had to support that because it is better than what it was. But the other one that's interesting to me, and I'm really curious to see how this is going to work, and was this revolving door issue. And there was a very short bill that came through that basically allowed when you're out on bond on an underlying felony, like say a burglary, and then you commit another crime, you're going to automatically, that original underlying judge on the first case will automatically be notified that you've committed another crime, and there'll be a hold placed on you until that judge can review the conditions of release and look at whether you should be out. And while it might not prevent very dangerous people from getting out under the new constitutional amendments, what I think it could prevent is your repeat burglars, the ones going out committing, 20 burglaries. And by the time you can file a motion to review conditions of release on the first case, which those constitutional amendments don't apply to, you just can't break the law, then you can actually be in front of a judge. Because it used to be, or it is, you file it and the guy's out and 4 more crimes have been committed by the time you can actually get into the judge. So this is a really small piece of legislation, but I'm really optimistic that it might really cut down on your repeat offenders that maybe aren't considered dangerous, but definitely menacing and dangerous to your property and things of that nature. So that flew through. And of course, he said I was going to get a gold star from the governor. But when I see a good crime bill, I don't care how it comes my way. It was, I think, a good crime bill. And so we'll see how that pans out. She did nothing to address children, youth, and families, which obviously, is just a mess and in shambles. And so she really did nothing, or there were no bills to protect our children. I even proposed a bill that fentanyl would be per se child abuse, like methamphetamine. If you expose a child to that, I got through judiciary and then it never got another hearing. So she seems to have no interest in really dealing with children and the danger that they're in. So as far as a special session on crime, if she really wants to address crime and really deal with the crime issues, I'm for that, but I'm not for coming back and readdressing her gun bills that didn't happen. And if it doesn't include addressing children, youth, and families and the problems they're having, I just don't see why a special session would even be necessary. And that's my opinion, but.
Yeah, I would say on that, her use of public safety or tough on crime was really just a cover for her gun bills, because if she really cares about public safety, as Andy said, she would have been addressing CYFD, because right now, as Andy said, it's in shambles, and that's truly public safety for our children, and there was nothing for that. So to call her this special session, she might want a public safety special session, I think is a farce. So, and unless it truly addresses what needs to happen with crime and with CYFD, it's a non-starter.
I bet going into an election cycle, she's more worried about the defeat that she felt on SB3, and she would hate to have a special session and get her butt whipped again.
As far as the gun bills go, that was the one concern that I got the most emails on, was from constituents throughout the entire state as far as the gun bills went. Last night I was still trying to clean up it's nothing for us to get like 500 emails a day, okay, while we're in session. And we just flat run out of time, but I do like to respond to those that don't necessarily send in a form letter, okay? But there was one that hit me last night about 11 o'clock whenever I was still trying to go through my email, and I responded to it, and it's like, folks, if you're that concerned about the gun bill and you're calling us morons, and they pointed to all of us for voting in favor of the waiting period, I said, where were you about 5 years ago, whenever I was the only one on the House that was in the Consumer and Public Affairs Committee that spoke my mind, and then I got escorted out of that room by the Sergeant of Arms. But then I did come back and held up my no sign, but I made my statement there. But I said, go back and look how the Republicans voted on those bills. And if you're from Bernalillo County, look at how your representatives and senators voted on that. All we're doing is making it easier for the criminals to get guns because they're going to break in and steal them anyway. And we do have a right to protect and defend in our state.
You know, he's not here, but Representative Reams was a retired police officer in Albuquerque. Almost every one of these bills that passed this year in a watered down form were his bills of years past, where he had been trying to get all of these bills passed, and they were voting down on party lines. Well, this year they started going back, digging his old bills out, putting their name on the top of them like it was their bill, bringing them forward, and Bill said, well, that looks a whole lot like what I did 4 years ago. You know, in fact, it's the exact same verbiage that was on my bill 4 years ago that you think is a good idea now that you were voting down years past. So, I mean, to his benefit, he's retiring, but he has been a stalwart for pushing good crime measures through the legislature. And he did see a couple of his bills of years past, you know, passed this year in a watered down form. But that, to his credit, he's really been pushing crime bills for a long time. He has seen and felt the problems in Albuquerque, and he's trying to address them.
And I'll add on that. I don't know, last year, if you remember, I was pushing a safe packaging on cannabis. I was pushing that it be a delinquent act for a child under 21, like alcohol, to be able to, you know, if they're smoking or possessing marijuana, cannabis in prisons being contraband. They thought I was crazy. I couldn't even get out of committee, and all of my bills are in the Cannabis Regulation Act now for this year. So I'm like, I passed 3 bills, but it doesn't have my name on it, but it's all in this, you know, now they understand it's a decent idea, and they take your ideas, and where they think you're crazy initially, then they put it in their bill so they look good during their election season. And it's frustrating for sure.
You know, we've come back the last 3 sessions with the governor and even the majority party saying that they want to tackle the crime issues. There's a lot of talk before the session about crime. And I think last year we came back and said, well, we passed a shoplifting or enhanced shoplifting bill. That's all we have on crime. This year we may have done a little more, but it really doesn't go to the root problems, and it really doesn't do anything to move the needle on the crime problems that are being experienced throughout New Mexico. And until our colleagues decide to do something about crime and get to the root problems. I mean, moving it from 15 years to 18 years, I don't see that as being much deterrence, particularly when all the surrounding states are generally up to life in prison on second-degree murders. So until we can get them to move the needle on their view toward crime and punishment, we're going to continue to be in the situation of having to constantly deal with crime, and unfortunately deal with great violent crime, particularly in Albuquerque. And it's, as I've said several times, they have created a cesspool up there. And until they're willing to deal with the cesspool and to make it, clean it up, we're going to have this problem, in my view, unless we can do something at the ballot box in November. We're going to continue to have that because the majority leader over in the House, Gail Chasey, she is the poster child for soft on crime. She was president of, or she was chair of judiciary for many years, and she wouldn't even hear bills that talked about dealing with underlying crimes. She's now majority leader.
She's retired.
She's
Yeah.
retiring.
She's retiring. Well,
Yeah.
hopefully we'll get somebody in there will be a little more aggressive on those fronts. So, you know, we really need to get a different attitude toward crime, and until people in Albuquerque start demanding it and start making sure that their representatives and senators get the message, we're going to continue to have a problem. So I don't think the governor is going to call us back up there. I agree with Andy, unless she knows she has the votes on specific legislation. And I think the governor would like to do some things on crime, but her colleagues in the House and the Senate on her side of the aisle aren't willing to do that yet. And I don't see it happening. With respect to gun bills, I would be surprised if she would call us up to do gun bills in an election year. I think they saw some low-hanging fruit. They got 2 out of 7 or 8 bills passed on guns, and they even allowed those to be watered down a little bit. So I think they tested the limits, and I don't think they're going to be pushing other gun bills particularly for a special session. They will be pushing it next year and the year after and the year after, but not for a special session.
One of our crime bills, the gun in polling place, that is a petty misdemeanor. It's the same fine as littering. So I mean, she can brag about it all you want to, but I mean, it's, as one of the policemen in Albuquerque sent me a text and he said, Jim, that's the same fine as littering or urinating in public. Big deal. So it's not one that they're going to be able to hang their hat on and say it's going to address crime in Albuquerque. It just doesn't do that.
Great comments, thanks. Okay, arriving at our final question. Thank you for bearing with me. Please share your thoughts on this year's capital outlay.
Well, it's not done yet. We still need a signature, and the people that Jim and Candy and Jared were talking about that took those hard votes on their side, they may see some of that advantage. I don't know what to expect with respect to our capital outlay, whether it gets signed into law or not. But I think we did. I know all of us labored together to try to accomplish some good things for the communities we represent. We tried to do some things locally and countywide, and you know, Dr. Powell's at the back. I think we attended to some of his needs out at the college and throughout the district, road projects and other needy projects that need to be done. Outside of capital outlay, although the bill that earmarked $45 million for US 380 didn't pass, we have a lot of money in a transportation package, and I think we're going to be pressing Department of Transportation District 2 to earmark a chunk of that money for US 380. And so it's not technically capital outlay, but it's money in House Bill 2 for road projects statewide, and I feel pretty good that some of that will get addressed. If you want to talk about specific capital outlay projects, we could do that, but overall, we each got a pretty good amount of money this year, and we were able to bring that back to our districts and do some things that the communities felt were important. So
The one thing I would mention on capital outlay, although it's fun and it's things that we get to bring back to our community, when we have the capacity to bring that much capital outlay back, it really should signal the citizenry that we're taxing you way too high. And half of that's your money. It doesn't come from, from someplace foreign. I mean, that's your money that you get back. And I think when we have $3.5 billion a year, year over year, and we've had the last 2 cycles, we've had $3.5 billion of new money. When I went in the legislature, we passed $4 billion for the budget. This year, we're over 10. And our legislature that I participate in has never seen a dollar that they didn't want to spend. I mean, I just tell you, they like to spend money for everything, but what we really ought to do, in my opinion, is send it back to you guys, because you guys can do more with it that makes more of a difference to your family than I'll ever do in a minute trying to put capital outlay together. So I look forward to the time when we don't have very much capital outlay and you got it all back in your pockets.
Kristen, one thing that we did do is you all asked for, I believe, $10 million for encouraging the Reno air races to come to Roswell. And the governor's office was playing hardball with us. We couldn't do a $10 million project among the legislature. But she asked that we try to raise $1 million. And we did that. So each of us contributed into that $1 million portion. The governor didn't give us $9 million, but I understand that she's putting in at least $2 million. So there should be $3 million in capital outlay designated to the Roswell Industrial Air Center for infrastructure upgrades, in hopes that Mr. Cole and the city council can make some preparations for that. And should that happen, we will work as hard as we can, sir, to continue that effort to make sure that we have the infrastructure in place for that those air races, because 80,000 people coming to Southeast New Mexico is a big deal. And we appreciate EDC, we appreciate the city, we appreciate the county for all working together to make that thing come to where it is now. We're in the top 2, is that right? Top 3?
Yes, sir.
So we're one of 3 communities in the vying for that. And I think talking to the city manager and the county manager, they feel pretty good about our efforts. And the cheerleaders back in the back, Mike Espiritu, and I think he feels pretty good about it. So we're happy to do that.
We appreciate everything that you've done for us, sincerely.
Thank you.
Following up on capital outlay and US 380, there were meetings held the past, 3 years, Greg, that we have attended out here at District 2. And folks, with the foresight that a lot of our leaders here in the community have, there's another business that's opening up that will greatly impact 380. And I think that we have convinced the DOT that this needs to be a top priority project because of the manufacturing that will take place out there. And I'm really excited to hear about this. But I know that we have talked to Francisco Sanchez, and folks, he does a wonderful job. He really does. I'm looking here at my notes from those meetings that we've had over how many miles that District 2 does cover. And it's a huge amount. It's the biggest district in the state. And we get the funding.
7,500.
I'm sorry?
7,500.
7,500 miles. Thank you very much for that. I just couldn't remember what it was. This is a top priority because that road, whenever we're talking about the air shows, how many people are going to be using that road going back and forth? Tell me what all goes up and down that road, folks. We're talking about school buses, mail service, tourists coming in, farmers and ranchers trying to get their products to market, the oil and gas industry that's using that. This is a big deal. And whenever you're having that many tourists come in, we have to put it as a top priority in our state, especially for ambulance service. I agree with Representative Townsend. That money needs to come back to y'all. Whenever I hear the term new money up there in Santa Fe, I always do this. Where did that new money come from, folks? From the industry you're trying to kill down in southeastern New Mexico. And that's oil and gas and agriculture. Those are top two producers. And those folks up there want us all to go away, and I'm not going to let that happen. If they don't want our money, that's fine. We'll just secede from the rest of the state. Let's go back to the original Lincoln County, Otero, Lincoln, Chaves, Eddy, Lee, Roosevelt. We'll even take in Quake County. We'll give them, I don't know, El Paso, they can have Beto O'Rourke, okay? And we will create our own government down here where things will run smooth and people can get jobs and we'll all be happy. That's just me, though.
Any other comments?
Thank you very much for the
Thank you all for
forum
being
and for
here.
caring enough to do it.
Of course, thank you for all that you do for us. We appreciate it. Does anybody like to ask any questions since we have a list? Warren?
Yeah, for what it's worth, I do want to just take a minute and acknowledge the legislators and our representatives for Southeast New Mexico. I cannot understate how important Senate Bill 17 was, the Healthcare Delivery and Access Act. Take Roswell, big impact for Roswell, but there's 44 hospitals in this state. Without that bill, and exactly like Representative Townsend stated, 3/4 of the hospitals were in the red in the last 2 years. COVID has made a challenge. What it also does for us is it makes us competitive and try to bring talent back into New Mexico. I always heard our biggest exports are oil and our youth. So for what it's worth, how do we bring back that talent? This really does put the hospitals in a position to really be competitive again. Malpractice, major topic. Next session is going to be a major battle state on that. But that being stated, this was a big deal. I just want to applaud you guys. Thank you so much for your support in that. Thanks.
Mayor?
Yeah, please don't underestimate 380 because the modular homes company that's coming in here, I'm going to tell you, they said they can build 5 boxes, what they call them, which will haul between the 12 and 20 foot wide by 50 by 75 feet box. And they can haul 5 of those out. The biggest market area we have for that product is Texas. I mean, we could, Amarillo, Lubbock, Midland, Odessa, El Paso, and then we have 3 in New Mexico, and that's Las Cruces, Santa Fe, and Albuquerque. But it has a real possibility for us too, for being able to put in housing at a more reasonable price for people. And if you're picking up something in a box like that, and it's already got the tile and everything already constructed in it, and you can move all that without any problems, it has a great deal of potential of being able to lower the cost of per square foot for home. And that's going to help us all with housing. And so please look at 380 again and 4-lane it, because if you take that down on a 2-lane or 2 lanes with a passing lane, you're still going to have the same problem if we're moving those big boxes. So the market area is 500 miles from Roswell for those houses. So it's got a really big potential. And if you go back and look at their other plant, an awful lot of the women, most of the women that work, or most of the people working those plants are women. So a lot of economic availability about raising the price and the money level that women can earn. So it's a really good deal for us. Thank you. Sorry. And thank you all for your work. I know what it's like.
Anybody else? Before I let you go, next week, a week from today, Thursday the 29th, we'll be hosting a workforce development seminar here at the EDC from 9 to 11. It's going to be a roundtable discussion. Again, the visits that I've done throughout our city with different places, I have noticed a lot of workforce issues, of course, people coming to work wanting to work, that whole deal we all know about. But there are businesses here that seem to have cracked the code on having success with retention. And so we've invited some of them in to discuss with others who might be struggling on what has made them successful. What are the tactics that they have or strategies for their climate? So please reach out to any of us if you're interested in coming again next Thursday, the 29th from 9 to 11. Mike, did you want to take anything?
Thank you so much. As I said earlier, we are so blessed to have you. So blessed to have you represent us. Many of our folks here, and this is just a small sample of the many people you represent. But the beliefs in Southeast New Mexico run very deep and very strong. And that's why I believe that our values, our culture, our beliefs are shared with you because we believe in where we live. So thank you so much for all the work you've done. I've been up there, as you know, and as our mayor knows, and many others. It's a lot of fun. Excuse me. But more importantly, we realize you face challenges in the work you do up there. Anything that we can do as a community to provide you information you need to be more successful or to make better informed decisions, I know this group and many others will be happy that we'll be happy here at the EDC to accept those that information, those questions, concerns, and share them with you, because we are part of your team as well. That's why we've asked you to represent us. Thank you so much for being here. I know that Rise with Roswell is coming up soon. Andrea?
Yes, March 14th. If you have not RSVP'd for either your individual ticket or your table, you can come on over across the parking lot to the Chamber of Commerce and RSVP today, because our table sponsors and our individual tickets are selling quickly.
Okay, thank you. But what Chris has said about our business seminar, there's free breakfast too. So just so you know, just come on over and we'll be happy to have you. Thank you again. Thank you for being here.
Yeah.